When disaster struck, I gave my last life jacket to my fiancée, Tina, and then got tossed by the waves. My head hit a rock, leaving me bleeding badly. When I got back from emergency surgery at the hospital, I joked with Tina that I'd lost my memory. But, to my surprise, Tina took my brother's hand and said I was her brother-in-law. But when I was about to put a wedding ring on another woman's hand, Tina came rushing over, eyes red, saying she should be my wife. "Am I your brother-in-law?" I leaned against the hospital bed, my head wrapped in a blood-stained bandage. My gaze swept over her hand tightly clasped with my brother's. They both seemed like villains, ripping apart a love story, as I had just returned from a near-death experience. Tina didn't dare look me in the eye, but when she caught sight of my brother's red eyes, her gaze turned firm. "Ben, I'm your brother's fiancé, so yes, you're my brother-in-law." My brother nodded along. "Ben, since you've lost your memory, don't worry about anything. Tina and I will take care of you." I was in disbelief. One was my brother, the other my love. It was supposed to be me engaged to her. I just intended to play a small joke about memory loss on Tina, not expecting she'd use it as a chance to dump me and stay with Eric. Seeing the emotion in Tina's and Eric's eyes felt like a dull knife slicing through my heart. I wondered when exactly it had started between them. Even when Eric went abroad years ago, Tina seemingly never forgot him. In our younger years, everyone recognized Tina and Eric as the happiest couple. I had a thing for Tina, but as long as my brother was around, she never spared me a glance. Later, Eric left Tina to pursue his dream of music abroad. Eric wanted the freedom of the wind, not to be controlled by anyone. Tina's love for Eric was destined to be a burden. After Eric left, Tina would drown her sorrows. I couldn't stand to see her this heartbroken, so I often looked after her. Yet, Tina would brush her fingers over my features, similar to Eric's, and confess to me. She might have been a burden to Eric, but to me, from the moment she moved in with her parents, I was smitten from the first glance. I wasn't dumb. I knew she was just using me as Eric's stand-in. Yet, my love for Tina made me willingly plunge into this muddy mess, even though I knew better. Just as we were about to marry, Eric returned. I could sense the shift in Tina's demeanor, distracted by his presence. I imagined countless ways Tina might leave me, but never expected such cruelty. I wondered if when I risked my life in the sea to save her, was she worried about me, or hoping I'd die so she could be with my brother? After stating my supposed identity, Tina left with Eric. I quietly followed them, and witnessed the scene I dreaded most. Tina and Eric, despite being in a hospital surrounded by people, shared a passionate kiss. I stood in the shadows, my wounds throbbing painfully, but my heart felt as though it was suffocating from the pain. I couldn't understand how Tina could treat me so heartlessly, returning to my brother while making a fool of me and trampling on my feelings. Later, when my parents visited, I thought they'd expose Tina's lies. But I was stunned when Eric suggested something, and my parents went along with Tina's deception. "Dad, Mom, is my brother really engaged to Tina?" I asked, struggling to speak, knowing they'd always favored Eric more. My dad seemed uneasy, but my mom quickly said, "Of course, Ben, you forgot because of your memory loss. Tina's loved your brother since forever. They're meant to be." I looked blankly at Tina. "Really? So, Tina, may I ask why I got injured?" Hearing this, Tina seemed to briefly recall the shipwreck and the moment I gave her my life jacket, risking my life for her. Yet, she brushed it off, saying, "Nothing much, just a shipwreck. That's why you got hurt." Really? My heart shattered. To Tina, my sacrifices seemed meaningless. I used to think even if she saw me as Eric's stand-in, a part of her would eventually care for me if I loved her enough. Now I realize in her eyes, I'm just a naive fool. After getting discharged, my life drowned in a sea of lies and deceit. Eric's ambition and greed were much bigger than I'd ever imagined. Though he'd spent years abroad, he achieved little in his music dreams. When I heard Tina boast with happiness that Eric had bought her the house I'd bought and furnished for our wedding, it felt like my world spun. Every photo of Tina and me in what was supposed to be our house was replaced with ones of her and my brother. One night, I overheard my parents talking. My dad said, "Honey, Ben's our son too. Isn't it wrong to deceive him like this?" But my mom replied nonchalantly, "What's so wrong about it? Look at how rough things have been for Eric since he came back with nothing. As Ben's brother, he should look out for him. Besides, we're not lying. Tina's always loved Eric. We're just setting things right." I heard it all, covering my mouth, trying not to let out my choked sobs. Turns out everyone sees it that way. Only Eric and Tina are a match made in heaven. Eric has everything. He has the most doting love from our parents. I just wanted Tina to love me a little, but it was destined to be a luxury. The next day, Eric came over saying he made seafood porridge just for me. But I looked at it coldly. He knows I've been allergic to seafood since I was a kid. I won't eat it. I just refused when Tina frowned. "Ben, can you not be so stubborn? You know how long your brother spent making you this porridge. Can you not waste your family's effort?" I looked up at Ben, who seemed unfair, and suddenly found it funny. I've been with Tina for almost 5 years. I remember all her likes. She's allergic to mangoes, loves spicy hot pot. But her? I've told her about my seafood allergy long ago. But she never remembered. Maybe she heard it before, but she must think my allergies aren't worth caring about compared to Eric. "Yeah, Ben, just have some porridge. With your health, how will you get better without having some?" Eric kept urging, placing the porridge near my mouth, almost forcing it down. Yet his eyes held a smug gleam. I said I wouldn't drink it. With a wave of my hand, Eric fell back instinctively, and the burning porridge spilled onto his leg. Eric cried out in pain. Tina was super tense, glaring at me. "Ben, how can you be so cruel? Eric is your brother. Refusing his porridge was one thing, but how could you burn him on purpose? I warn you, Eric, if something happens to your brother, I won't let you off." I couldn't be bothered to explain. It felt ridiculous. "Yeah, you won't let me off. After all, Tina, my brother is your fiancé, so it's right for you to take his side." Hearing this, Tina's pupils flickered, looking a bit guilty. But just then, Eric grabbed Tina's hand. "Tina, don't blame my brother. He didn't do it on purpose. I didn't hold the bowl steady." Hearing him, Tina looked at me full of disdain. "Ben, people like you don't deserve to have a family." Then she carefully helped Eric to the hospital. I remembered my parents' lies for Eric, heartache twisting like a knife. Tina was wrong. The love from my family never belonged to me. It was always for my brother. When my parents heard of Eric's injury, they rushed over to condemn me, calling me a selfish ingrate. Watching their aggressive stance, suddenly, I felt exhausted, not wanting to argue anymore. It seems my parents never considered that in all these years my brother was abroad, he didn't even call. It was me, their so-called selfish ingrate, who took care of them. I couldn't be bothered to explain, just kicked them out. After all, growing up, right or wrong, my parents always sided with my brother. That night, Tina and Eric returned. I listened to my parents and Tina doting on Eric in the living room. Felt like I was the outsider, left to live in the dark alone. The next day, Tina came to see me. "Ben, I'm planning to marry your brother. But when we do, we'll need you as his brother to help out with a lot." I bitterly smiled and stood up. "Really? So, Tina, will I have to call you sister-in-law then?" Seeing Tina's flustered face, I suddenly remembered how I proposed to her many times in the past years. But Tina refused, saying she wasn't ready. The irony is, the moment my brother returned, she was ready, eager to make him my replacement and marry her. "Whatever, tomorrow your brother and I are going to take wedding photos. He asked me to get you to come with us." Tina said this and left quickly, as if I was something terrifying. In the bridal shop, I watched the assistant pull back the curtain, revealing Tina in a stunning white wedding gown. She took my breath away, and I started towards her without thinking. Yet Eric got to her first, pulling her into an embrace and kissing her like he was flaunting. "Wifey, you look amazing." Tina looked at Eric, smiling sweetly. "You look handsome, hubby." I gave a bitter smile. True love hits different. Those words, hubby, Tina never said to me. Even when I kidded around calling her wifey, she would get upset. telling me not to be so frivolous. Today, I finally understood. Calling her wifey wasn't too lighthearted for her. It was just the wrong person saying it. I turned to leave, but Tina suddenly stopped me. I paused, feeling a flicker of hope, but Tina smiled, handing me the camera. "Ben, take a picture of me and your brother, would you?" "Sure," I managed to say, not understanding why. Seeing Tina in her wedding dress, eyes fixed only on my brother, made my eyes sting. I didn't get it. Even if Tina doesn't love me, we're childhood friends. How could she treat me like this? Eric is planning to slowly take over everything that's mine. Not just my home, but also my company, my every asset. To make me transfer the company to him, my parents absurdly claimed that the business I built was actually set up by Eric. And I'm just a frontman taking a salary from him. Eric is the real power behind the scenes. Hearing my parents' lousy lies, a deep sadness filled me. I may have memory loss, but I'm not stupid. To them, Eric is their beloved firstborn. To help him, they shamelessly spout these ridiculous lies. I stood up, my gaze unwavering on Tina, as if she were the last hope. "Tina, I want to ask you, is what they're saying true?" Tina's face showed a bit of hesitation. "If I could go back to the company, I'd never leave again. I'd stay by your side. And Ben, since he's my brother and has helped me so much, I'd definitely help him more." Tina closed her eyes, and after a moment, she opened them again. "Your brother's telling the truth." At that moment, everything went black. Felt like the whole world abandoned me. I just couldn't understand. Why didn't I die in that shipwreck? At least then I wouldn't have to wake up and face this brutal reality. It's ridiculous. The people I love the most tricked me, all for Eric. Fine. All the love I had for Tina was gone in that moment as I stumbled back to my room. That night, Tina knocked on my door. I opened it and she was holding a plate of food. "Ben, eat something. You're still recovering." I looked at the shrimp in her hands and couldn't help but smile bitterly, my eyes stinging. "I don't like shrimp." Tina was flustered and started to turn around. "I'll have the maid make something else." I stopped her. "Tina, what kind of feelings do you have for my brother?" After thinking for a moment, Tina lowered her head. "Love, I guess. I just feel like Eric and I are meant to be together. So that's it. Someone who's meant for you doesn't have room for another." I murmured to myself. "What did you say?" Tina didn't hear me clearly. "Nothing. Sis, get some rest. Good night." I firmly shut the door. The next day, my mom had my brother take me back to the company to hold a shareholders meeting in my name and transfer my shares to Eric. Parents supposedly love their children and plan for their future. It's comical how my mom and dad acted like they only had Eric. As we were leaving, I saw Tina give my brother a passionate kiss before getting in his passenger seat. At the office, everyone was gathered in the boardroom. When my brother gave me a look, urging me to talk about transferring the shares, I sat at the head of the table and calmly said, "I'm sure you all know about my recent injury. This incident made me realize some things. I've decided to revoke Tina's position as business director immediately and fire her." "Ben, what are you saying?" Tina's face went pale. "I've worked so hard for the company for years. How can you just fire me?" "Yeah, Ben, we're not here for that today. Weren't you going to transfer the company to me?" Eric's words caused a stir among the shareholders. Looking at Tina, pale and shocked, I suddenly felt a sense of relief and smiled. "Tina, let's call off our engagement. Also, I didn't have amnesia." "No way, how could you not have amnesia?" Tina turned white and got up in a panic, gripping my hand. "Ben, let me explain. It's not what you think." My gaze on Tina grew cold. "Enough, Tina. I understand. You love my brother, right? I'll make it easy for you. Let's call off the engagement." "Ben, how can you talk to Tina like that? Everything she did was for me. If you're going to blame someone, blame me." Eric always played the nice guy role. And back then, wasn't it because I left the country and gave you a chance? Without our parents' help, do you think you could run a company this big? I laughed bitterly. "Eric, dear brother, after all these years, you're still as fake as ever. Should I remind you? When you left our family and your then girlfriend Tina for your so-called music dream, taking most of our family's money with you. Hearing me expose Eric like this, Tina bit her lip. Ben, don't go too far. Eric is still your brother. I couldn't help but feel a pang of sarcasm. Yeah, he's my brother, but the company's mine. There's only one boss, and that's me. And Tina, who are you to me? My sister-in-law? Pointing at the scar on my forehead, I chuckled bitterly. Tina, you know, when my head hit the rocks, all I thought about was your safety. I was scared death would stop me from seeing you. But you, as soon as I barely escaped death, you were cruel enough to say I'm your brother-in-law. What a joke. I'm sorry, Ben. But I cut Tina off. Enough, as you wish. Let's call off the engagement. I had security escort Tina and Ben out. If I could, I'd never want to see them again. But by nightfall, my parents called. As soon as I picked up, my mom's voice lashed out at me. Ben, are you out of your mind? Eric's your brother. Why would you trick us about losing your memory? You embarrassed your brother in the boardroom like that. Are you even human? Don't forget, Tina was originally your brother's girlfriend. If it wasn't for Eric leaving, you wouldn't have stood a chance. Here, my mom's voice softened a bit. All right, forget it. At this point, your father and I don't want to argue anymore. Just come back and apologize to your brother. We're family, why sweat the small stuff? I sat in my office, turned my head to look at the buildings outside the window, and said coldly, Mom, that's Eric's home over there. Isn't it? If it's a small matter, how about you go talk to my uncle and see if Dad will smile and bless you too? Outrageous. My dad's furious voice came through the phone. I hung up, feeling relieved. I've been through hell and back. I won't long for love or family that I can't have. From now on, I'll only live for myself. I had the house I planned to move into with Tina put up for sale through the real estate agency. I didn't expect Tina to hear about it and angrily come to my office to confront me. Ben, how could you sell that house? That was our new home. We designed everything together. How can you be so cold and ruthless? Tina's eyes turned red. If it were before, I'd have given in and comforted her. But now, I sat in my chair, watching her tears flow, and suddenly chuckled. What are you laughing at? Tina snapped. I'm laughing, Tina, because I wonder from what position you're speaking to me. Are you my ex-fiancée or my sister-in-law? Tina looked embarrassed. I'm sorry, Ben. I know you're mad at me, but I really can't let go of that house. Ben, you don't know, it holds the sweetest memories of us. I smirked. So you were fine marrying my brother and planning to move in? Tina was speechless. After a while, she tearfully said, Ben, I know you're still mad. I promise I won't see Eric anymore. I don't want our brotherhood to be affected because of me. Just then, my assistant entered and informed me that the candidate for our new commercial director was here for an interview. I straightened my clothes and stood up. As I walked past Tina, I nonchalantly said, Tina, once I no longer have love or an engagement with you, what do you count as to me? Ben. Tina froze, her face pale. I didn't respond and walked out. When I got to the meeting room, the interviewee was covering her face with a folder. I frowned, puzzled. Miss, is there a reason you can't show your face? Not exactly, just wondering if my old classmate can recognize me by voice, she said playfully. Old classmate? The voice stirred something, but my past world only really focused on Tina. The woman casually put down the folder. All right, I'll reveal myself. Long time no see, class president. Her clear smile and elegant face jogged my memory. Linda, it's you. You finally remember me, class president. You used to always nag me about homework, and now you can't recall me. Heartbreaking, Linda teased, raising her eyebrow. I glanced at her resume, unable to help praising, wow, Linda. Never imagined the class slacker in high school could become so accomplished. Definitely, don't underestimate me, Linda smiled confidently. After discussing Linda's one-year plan if she joined Ben's commercial department, her brilliant responses and past work experiences convinced me to hire her. As Linda was leaving, she extended her hand with playful seriousness. Well, Ben, I'm now under your command. Take care of me, you bet. Welcome aboard. As soon as I shook Linda's hand, Tina burst in, interrupting my assistant, pointing at Linda. and looking heartbroken. Ben, is she replacing me? How could you? Over the years, I've closed so many deals for the company. Can she? You'll regret losing me. I was about to tell her to stop the hysterics. How thick-skinned is she to think? She fooled me, claiming I was her fiancé's little brother for my brother's sake. But Linda scoffed. I sure can, and I'll do even better. Tina fumed. Who do you think you are? How many years have you been here? What qualifies you to say that? Linda took out a stack of documents from her bag. Tina, was it? I never fight unprepared. Your projects over the years aren't even that valuable. Some even harm Ben's stock. I'm a Harvard Ph.D.in business and have worked at top national firms. My education and experience far surpass yours. Tina was speechless, looking at me teary-eyed. Ben, are you going to let her insult me like this? I sneered. Tina, isn't it the truth? How much have you skimmed from the company? You think I don't know? Not sending you to the police is my last ounce of leniency. Tina turned pale. Ben, don't do this. I have my reasons. I was tired of her excuses. I know, all for my brother's music career. You needed funds for his overseas life, even if it ruined my company. That's your excuse, Tina? I wasn't dumb. I knew Tina had been funneling money to Eric and skimming off the top. But my love for Tina blinded me. Now that I saw clearly, I couldn't allow a leech like her in my company anymore. It's not like that, Ben. Please. Tina's voice was choked with tears. I took a step back, my face expressionless. Sis-in-law, don't act like this. You might not care, but I still have some dignity as your brother-in-law. In the end, Tina left looking upset. Linda stood next to me with a grin. Wow, Mr. Class President. After all these years, you've finally opened your eyes. It wasn't easy, was it? I just smiled without saying a word. After Tina was let go from my company, she teamed up with my brother to start a new business. She had been working for Ben as a business director for years. When she left, she took quite a few clients with her to Eric's company. That night, I came back to the new apartment I once bought to pick up a forgotten passport. But there she was, Tina, right inside. I frowned. The real estate agent said the place was sold, and the new owners would move in soon. So why was Tina here? Just as I was about to speak, Tina stood in the living room, gazing at me with longing eyes. Yeah, Ben, I bought the place, she said. You bought it? I realized Tina had probably pulled some strings during the sale. No way would I have let the agent sell the apartment to her otherwise. I was surprised. This place cost at least a few million. Where did Tina get the money? But since she already bought it, I couldn't be bothered to discuss it further. I grabbed my stuff and was ready to leave. Just then, Tina hugged me. Ben, don't treat me like this. You don't know. It's weird. I loved your brother for so many years, but when you said you wanted to break off the engagement, it felt like something inside me was empty. I forcefully pried her hands off me. It doesn't matter anymore. But when I was almost at the door, Tina yelled sorrowfully, Ben, do you really not love me anymore? I paused, leaving behind just a gentle reply, Tina, just consider the Ben who once loved you as gone in that shipwreck. Saying that, I took large strides out, leaving Tina alone in the empty living room. The next day, when I got to the office, Linda brought a stack of files to my desk. Look at this. These are all the projects I closed. Tina thought she could take those low-end clients and that I'd be helpless. Linda's work was undeniably excellent, and the projects she secured were really beneficial for the company. But as I closed the file, I looked at her petite figure and delicate features, and couldn't resist asking something I'd been curious about since the first time I saw her. Linda, I'm really curious. Why did you leave your position as a regional president to come here just to be a humble business director? Linda put away her playful smile, her eyes suddenly serious. Of course, because there's someone here I want to see. Feeling her gaze, I was a bit embarrassed. Who? Linda seemed a little down. Ben, you don't need to know. After all, he never cared about me before. I frowned. I know too well the pain of unrequited love. Just as I was about to advise her not to get caught up on one person, Linda suddenly looked at me with a smile. But that's all right, Since I'm here, I'll make sure he'll care about me. For some reason, seeing her like this made my heart skip a beat. A few days later, it was my dad's birthday. At dinner, Eric was glowing with pride because his company landed a couple of big contracts at my expense. Ben, I told you, had I chosen business over music back in the day, you wouldn't be where you are today. When Eric tried to hold Tina's hand in front of me, she didn't respond. Let's eat, Tina said quietly, and Eric's face turned sour. Somehow, Eric complained to my mom, and she started setting me up on blind dates. When I ignored her, she even had girls show up at my office. One girl's mom even dragged her in, shouting, "I don't care. Parents set this up, and Ben's mom agreed to let my daughter marry him, so he should take responsibility." No matter how I tried to reason with them, they wouldn't listen. Just when I was about to call the cops on these pests, Linda suddenly grabbed my hand, giving the girl's mom a disdainful look. "Madam, while I get you're eager for your daughter to find a rich husband, this is going overboard. Ben already has a girlfriend." I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. "I have a girlfriend? How come I didn't know?" Linda then dropped another bombshell, and Ben's girlfriend is me. The girl's mom wasn't convinced. "Just because you say so, I'm supposed to believe it? I don't believe me? I'll prove it." Confused about what Linda meant, she suddenly pulled my tie and stood on her toes to kiss me. I stared in shock as the girl, witnessing this, couldn't take it any longer and pulled her mother away. After they left, I took Linda out for a meal to thank her. Unexpectedly, Linda put down her phone and said earnestly, "No need to thank me. I like you." "What? That can't be." I almost choked on my drink. "Why do you like me?" Linda's eyes were deep. "Ben, have you heard of the 15-year wait for the migratory bird? I've liked you for 15 years. Why didn't I know?" I probed. Linda's eyes turned a bit sad. "Because back then, your heart and eyes were filled with Tina. There was no room for anyone else." I still remember that night when I was out. A man dragged me into an alley, and when his hands, she shuddered. I thought my life was over, but then you saved me. "So it was you. If you liked me just because you felt grateful, I was going to say no." But Linda shook her head. "No, Ben. I truly like you. You know, my biggest regret is not having the courage to win you over from Tina when we were younger. So now I'm going to give it my all." After saying that, she walked away before I could reply. Our kiss ended up being leaked online, and strangely, I didn't rush to clarify it. Then later that night, Tina showed up at my place and blocked my way. I didn't want to deal with her, but she grabbed me. "Ben, is it true? Is Linda really your girlfriend?" Trying to shake her off, I subconsciously nodded. "Yeah." "No, Ben, you love me. You can't love someone else. I'm not in love with you anymore. I'm tired." I pulled away from Tina and headed upstairs. She tried to follow me, but suddenly Eric arrived. He held Tina back, and they ended up having a big argument. In the middle of the night, Eric sent me a message. "Ben, I'm going to beat you." I laughed, almost mocking Eric's overconfidence. Eric was always impatient. He made a bet with another finance company to take down mine and even took a high-interest loan. But he didn't know I was watching him. I teamed up with that opposing company and set him up to take over his business. My parents had invested their retirement savings to help my brother, and even with Tina's help, he had no shot at bouncing back. What I didn't expect was Eric, cornered, would go as far as kidnapping me. He tied me up in an abandoned warehouse and spread gasoline all around. Eric's eyes were full of hate. "Tina, do you know how jealous I am of you? You've been inferior to me in every way since we were kids, so why did you get to have it better as adults? Even Tina fell for you. So even though you're my brother, you have to die." I was tied to a post, unable to move. "Eric, you left Mom and Dad and Tina. Your bad fortune is your own fault. Shut up. If I can't beat you in business, then once you're dead, you'll still be no match for me." Eric threw a lit lighter to the ground, igniting the warehouse in flames. I was left alone in the fire. Every survival instinct kicked in as I struggled till my wrists bled, but couldn't get free. Just when I thought I wouldn't make it out alive, Linda rushed in from nowhere, trying to untie the knot. Seeing the fire worsen, I quickly told her, "How did you know I was here? Forget me and get out. I'm not leaving." When you disappeared, I looked into surveillance. The police will be here any minute. I'm not abandoning you, Ben. Linda cried as she worked on the ropes. Aren't you scared of dying? I shouted. I am scared, but losing you scares me more. Linda instinctively shouted back, tears falling onto my hands, sparking a pang in my heart. Finally, just before the fire engulfed the warehouse, the ropes came loose, and we escaped the inferno holding hands. In that moment, I knew where my heart belonged. I reported it to the police, and Eric was quickly arrested. Despite my parents begging for mercy, I didn't soften. Eric was sentenced to 20 years for attempted murder. Once everything settled, I proposed to Linda in front of the whole company. The warmth of Linda's love made me feel cherished and needed again. Thank you, Ben, for finally seeing me. Tears welled in Linda's eyes. Linda, I should thank you. Your presence gave me the courage to love again. As I knelt to slip the ring onto her finger, Tina rushed in, eyes red. Ben, don't marry her, she pleaded. I regret it, I was wrong. I've loved you for a long time but was too stupid to realize it. Seeing Linda's tension, I smiled at her and placed the ring on her hand. Linda seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. Rising, I looked at Tina coldly. I'm with someone I love now. Everything you say doesn't matter anymore. Why? You loved me so much before. How could I have lost you? Tina cried desperately, but I couldn't care less. A few months later, as Linda and I exchanged vows at the chapel, news broke that Tina had jumped into the sea. She left a note saying she was going to find the part of me that once loved her. Hearing this, I felt no waves inside, and proceeded joyfully with Linda through our wedding. Friends called me heartless, but watching Linda sleep peacefully curled into me, it didn't matter. The difference between me and Tina is that what's past stays past. I refuse to be trapped by it and miss out on who I truly love.